Okay guys, welcome back to episode 3 of our remake of our platformer. So this is the game that we first started, well this is the very first game that we made on this channel. It was a simple 2D platformer where we had to control a character in the scene and jump across from platform to platform while collecting coins as well as avoiding enemies. So we are currently remaking the series. We're going to take it a little bit further than we did in the first attempt to make it. And in today's episode, we're going to carry on with it, and we are just going to work on our animation. So I believe in our last episode, we started working on our running animation, but we didn't quite finish it. I think we actually made the animations. Now let's go and implement them into the actual game itself and make it so that when you move the character, it corresponds to the correct animation that it needs. So when we go and run, and when we go and use our arrow keys and we tell our player to move in one certain direction, we're going to want it to go and run, make it look like running, as well as when we go and jump. I don't know if we'll do the jump in today's episode, but when we want our player to jump by pressing the spacebar, we want it to play the jump animation. And then I think we also have other animations, like we have a dying animation, we have we have a climbing animation here, and we also have a rolling animation. So today we'll start off with the running animation. We might implement the jumping one as well. We'll see how long it takes. But yeah, we'll probably stop there until we've got a reason to implement the climbing and the rolling. And the dying one. So when we add in enemies into the scene, we'll go and implement the dying animation. Same thing for the climbing. When we have like ladders and stuff that we actually need to climb, we'll go and do that. And then the same with the last one, the rolling. So let's jump into it and get started. So this is exactly where we left off with episode 2. Haven't done anything else, so we can see that where's the play button? The play button has disappeared, but I think we can go to window, file, nope, edit, no, assets, game object. Where is it? There's somewhere over here. There it is, play. Okay, so here, let's go play the game and see where we're at. So our player, we can move from left to right, but you can see we haven't implemented the animation to work as well as the jumping of it, because when I press space, nothing actually happens. So that's what we're going to work in today's episode. So let's go and start with that. So we do have this running animation over here. Let's go see if we can play this animation just so that we can see it work. That's interesting. Did we not... Where's our animations? Okay, clearly we don't have animations. I'm pretty sure we made them in our last episode. But let's go actually here. Let's see, idle. Let's select our player and then... Okay, so here we have our run, and let's play that. So okay, so we do have our running animation. I don't know where it is in our project files, but maybe that's a bit weird. But anyway, we have it, so let's go and implement it so that when we go and run, we play in this animation, not just our idle animation. So to do that, we have to select our player, and you can see that over here, we have this in our animator window. We have like a spider diagram by the looks of it. When we go and press play, we can see that on entry, the game goes straight to an idle position or an animation. So you can see if we zoom into here, I don't know if you can zoom and scale up. Okay, let's not do that. But you can see that the player is currently at an idle animation. So you can see it's kind of jumping up and down a little bit slow. So when we go and press either one of the arrow keys to move into this left or right, we want to now transition into our running animation. And then when we go and stop moving from left to right, then we want to go back and transition back into our idle animation. So that is what we're going to do today. So to do that, it should be fairly simple. We already here have our parameters. So when we are running, we can see that we have a float here that I believe we set in our player script. So when we move our player, here we go and get the direction, and that uses the horizontal axis, and then it goes and times that by the speed, and that gives us the current velocity that we want to move the player in. Then we just go and add that to our rigid body on that's already attached to the character, and then that moves our player in that certain direction. So if we go into the right, obviously the velocity or the direction will be a positive, and if we're going to the left, it will be negative. In that case, the player will move in those directions. So here under this third line, this is where we go and set the animator float, which is this one here is running. So whenever we move, simply by pressing one of the horizontal keys, so I believe that can be either the A or D key, or the left or right arrow, this input.getAxis is actually going to pick that up, and then that is going to times that value by our speed, which I believe we are getting here from our global, which is currently set at 5, which seems to be fine for now. But now we want to go and set that to our is running. So let's go and see what we're doing. So if we press play, you can see that this here, you can see on our animator tab, when I press the right arrow, the is running goes up to a maximum of 5, because I believe when we press either one of the arrow keys or the A or D key, the value that it goes up to is 1, and then the value that it goes down to is -1 if you press left or the A key. So that times by our speed value, just to make it go a little bit faster, which is 5, is, or obviously 1 times 5 is 5. And then if we go to the left, obviously -5 times 5, I mean -1 times 5 is obviously -5. So we need to go and now make this animation work. So let's go back to our, actually we don't need to go back here. Let's go back to Unity, and now we need to set up our transitions. So you can see that we have arrows here. So let's go and set this up. So if you haven't done these arrows already, all you have to do is click on your idle or whichever one you want to make the transition from. Click on it and, well, right click on it, then click on make transition, and then all you have to do is click on whichever one you want, but we don't want to do that because we already have it. So let's go. From our idle state, we want to make a transition up to our running state. So here is our arrow. Now this is not going to have an exit time because we don't want it to wait for the animation to finish before we go and start playing the running animation. So as soon as we start running or moving in a certain direction, we want to see the next animation play straight away. So we go and untick our has exit time so that doesn't affect it. And then we need to give it a condition. So as long as we are running, that means the is running needs to be greater than 0.1. So let's go and give that a test and see. So here, if we go and press the right key, you can see that we now transition into a running animation. But if we go and press the left key, it still works because we are still stuck in a running state. So now when we go back to a idle state, so as you can see now the player is not moving, so it needs to be playing an idle animation. So let's go and figure that out. But later you'll see that once we've got that figured out, it's not going to work for our going in the left direction. I'll show you why. So to go back into an idle state, we want the condition to be is running is going to be 0. Hold on. No, it needs to be less than 0.1, I think. Okay, so that should be fine. So now let's go and test it out. So as long as our player is idle, you can see that the running value now is 0, and if we go into the right direction, you can see it increases, and if we stop, it goes back to 0, but because it's less than 0.1, it now changes back into the idle animation, that's exactly what we want. So now the only problem with this is it's not really going to work with when we go to the left, because you can see that when we make the transition from idle to running, the is running value needs to be greater than 0.1. But when we go to the left, you can see that the value goes below 0. So that's not really going to reach this condition here. So we need to go and fix that in our code. So to do that, let us go and instead of assigning our direction X, which is either going to be from 0 to 5 or from 0 to -5, we can go and just say, I think we could probably just over here go and say direction X times, how are we going to make sure that it's not negative? let's just do this. Let's just put a an if statement here, just for now, just temporary purposes, just to see that the animation actually works. So let's go and say if direction X is less than 0, direction X is going to be times equals -1. So that should give us a positive value. So let's go and test that out and see. Because now that we've done that, that should solve our issue with having to solve the left and right movement. So if we go to the right, you can see that our value is still positive. If we go to the left, it's also now positive. So you can see we can move in either direction and still get our running animation. But as soon as we stop, our idle animation gets played. So that's perfect. Okay, so we will change that later just to make it a little bit better. I mean, we could probably just leave it like that, but we'll leave it like that for now until we actually have to change it. Okay, so that is our running animation. Let's go and see. Let's go and try and implement our jumping animation. Now, we are going to do this in 2 parts. The first one is going to be actually implementing the jump feature itself. And that would be allowing our player to jump off of the ground and then fall back to the ground, obviously. But the next part is going to be to make sure that when we are actually in the air, we're not going to allow our player to jump even further. Because if this is allowed, then you can just jump and jump and jump and just disappear off the screen. Because at the moment, I don't believe that we are going to have the camera follow the player. So if you just carry on jumping, you will disappear out of the scene and the camera will just be focused on the... No, what am I saying? That's completely wrong. We are going to have the camera following the player, because if we don't, then either way the player is going to fall off or eventually disappear off the screen. But in today's episode, we are just going to figure out how to jump. And then maybe in tomorrow's episode or the next episode in this series, we will go and add in a ground check to see if the player is actually on the ground. And then if the player is on the ground, then we can go and allow to jump. So this should be fairly simple. Now we can add another method into our update method. So this method is going to be a jump method, and this is only going to be used to jump, as it states. So let's go and say private void jump. And then in this method, we're just going to have one if statement, and that's going to be if the space bar is pressed, then let's go and add some force in the upward direction to the player. So let's go and say if the, what is it? It is get key. No, it's going to be if input dot get key down, then we need to get a key code of, I think it's space. Yeah, space. And then that should be it. So now in our curly brackets here, we can go and add the force in the correct direction. So to do that, we are going to need access to our rigid body. So we do have a rigid body over here, so we can access that one by saying rigid body dot, what am I doing? Rigid body dot velocity is going to be equal to new vector 2, and then this is going to be rigid body dot velocity dot x, and then we're going to times that by our, well, we want the x value to stay the same. So because we're going to be, the jump force is not going to be added to the x value, it's going to be added to the y value, so it goes up. The x value will stay the same, so we'll just get the velocity of the x, which means getting the current velocity of the player and just keeping it as it is. And then we're going to need a jump force for this. So let's go and say float jump force, and we'll set that to equal to 5 for now. I don't really know how much that is going to be, or if it's even going to be enough, but we'll leave it at 5 for now. And then all we can do is simply go and say jump force. So that should allow us to jump. So let us go and test that out. So that should mean that whenever we press our spacebar, as long as the game is running, we should be able to jump. So let's go and test it out. So you can see we can press our spacebar as much as we want, but as long as we keep pressing it, the player is just going to keep jumping. So this is the problem that I was talking about earlier. When we want our... We're not going to want our player to jump all the time because that's just silly. We're only going to want it to play... Maybe we could add in like a feature where you could double jump to like get over things. But that's a feature for way down the line. So probably in the next episode, we will add a feature that goes ahead and checks if the player is actually on the ground. So we're going to need to add a object to the player and a tag to the ground, and it's going to check if the player is intersecting with the ground object. It's going to look at the tag, I believe, and then if it is, it's going to allow the player to jump whenever the spacebar is pressed. And the same thing, if it's not intersecting, then obviously we're not going to allow the player to jump. So let's have a look and see what animations we still have to do. So we've got our jumping animation. Actually, no, we didn't do... Let's go and sort that out. We allowed our player to jump, but we're not actually playing the jumping animation. So I believe this is a trigger. So when we go and jump, I think the only thing we have to do is... Let's see... We need to go and set jumping is equal to true, because you can see here in our conditions we've set if the player is jumping, then let's go and set it to true. So as soon as we go and add the force, we need to go and say animator dot set, or what is it, set trigger, and then it is going to be, let's see, what do we do for the other one? Global dot is running. Okay, so let's go here and create another one. And this one is going to be is jumping. And then we change this is jumping. Let's make sure we spelt it correctly. That looks weird. Is jumping only has one P, right? Let's go and change this. The two P's just looks stupid. Okay, so that should be fine. Is jumping is equal to true. And then what is it? Let's go and see. So now let's see, did we set that? Let's save that and then go back to player and then see here, set trigger. So this is going to be global. That's not how you spell global. Global dot is jumping. That is now going to be true. So we just need to type in true, and that should be fine. But what's the problem here? Takes 2 arguments. Reset trigger. Okay, that's a problem. That needs to be set trigger, I believe. No overload for method. Set trigger takes 2 arguments. Let's see. Let's try this again. Set trigger name, string name, global dot is running. Maybe it doesn't take another argument like that. Okay, so that should be fine. Let's go and test that out and see. We might have to reset it back to its default. So if we press play, let's see, if we press space, that didn't work. Jumping is set to true. Okay. Now let's see, should we reset it afterwards? Reset trigger. Let's try that. I doubt that that's going to work. Otherwise, we'll continue this in the next episode. But let's go and give it a test. I have done this before. I just haven't done it in a very long time. So can't really remember. So we can still run from left to right. We can still go back into our idle state. If we press space, we don't get... Did I use the wrong one? Is running. That's why. Is jumping, that's why. That should work. So I believe, let's just get rid of that, because we probably do need that so that we don't get stuck in a jumping animation state. But let's go and test that out. So this should work. We now should be able to see our player jump. Nope. I mean, let's first of all, before we even do that, let's make sure that we actually have a jumping animation. Jump. No, we don't. Okay, that's probably why. So let's go to our sprites. Let's go to our animations. We have a, what is it? Nope. Sprites. Main character. Animations. Where is it? We need to find our player. Here it is. Jump. Fall, rise. Drag that into there, and let's just play that and see. Okay, that's very fast. That doesn't really look like much of an animation, to be honest. Let's go move that there, and then move this down a bit. Does that look better? Okay. What I think this is, I don't think it's really an animation. I think it is a... When we jump, it goes and changes the sprite of the character, and then as soon as it starts falling, it goes and changes it to the falling character image, or whatever sprite, that's what it's called. So when we go and press up or space, you can see that our animation is working, but I believe we don't really have much of a jumping animation. So let's go and reset the trigger. So let's go and say reset trigger, and then that should set it back to false. So let's go and test that out. So we can still run from left to right. We still go back to an idle, and then if we press jump, okay, so that doesn't work. So we will fix that in the next episode. Well, I think what we have to do is, instead of playing the animation, we actually have to go and just change the sprite of the character for when it is going up in an upwards direction. And then as soon as it starts falling, we go and swap it down to the falling sprite. So we're going to do that in the next episode, whenever that is. It might be tomorrow's episode. And then once we've done that, I think we'll actually start building like a very simple level, so that we can start working on implementing things like collecting coins and like jumping over obstacles and jumping onto different platforms. But that's going to be it for today's episode. So thanks so much for watching. If you haven't done already, please go and hit this button over here to subscribe to the channel, and then I'll see you guys in tomorrow's episode. So thanks for watching, and goodbye.